Hello and welcome. President Muhammadu Buhari resumes Friday prayers at the Villa Mosque, observes physical distancing as mosques in the nation's capital reopen for Jumat service. Lagos State government continues clinical trials for hydroxychloroquine, says test results from rapid diagnostic test kits are not accurate. Despite new record of COVID-19 cases in Kogi State by the NCDC, Governor Yahya Bello insists the state is coronavirus-free, lifts lockdown restriction on Kababunu local government. More civil rights groups protest against rising cases of rape across the country, with rights activists demanding stiffer penalties. And US President Donald Trump faces more criticism after making remarks about George Floyd during news conference on job gains. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and later on news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, African Development Bank approves new 5-year strategy for Nigeria to tackle economic shocks arising from COVID-19.
On sports news, the Athletics Integrity Unit provisionally suspends women's 400 meters world champion Salwa Eid Nasser for failing to make herself available for anti-doping tests.
And from Abuja, Federal High Court Abuja reaffirms powers of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to deregister political parties.
Allahu Akbar. Sami Allah. Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Allah.
And there we see President Muhammadu Buhari today attending the Friday prayers at the Aso Rock Mosque, the first time since the restrictions imposed due to the coronavirus pandemic about 12 weeks ago. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 had issued new guidelines on religious activities. Only close aides of the president and officers in the villa on grade level 14 and above participated in the prayers after they were thoroughly screened. Each had to wear a face mask as well as sanitize their hands as safety measures. Social distancing was also strictly observed in line with the guidelines on public gatherings.
You know, the president as a citizen himself, but beyond that, as a leader of the people. He has a duty to show the Nigerian public the way to observe the prescribed protocols as they exist in the FCT. And I think this is what the president had done, going through the check who is going into the mosque, you know, and then they sanitize their own hands, and then they keep social distance, you know, inside. So all of it is to show Nigerians this is the way, and that is the responsibility of leadership. By observing prescriptions as indicated from state to state. Because without this, the war against coronavirus cannot be defeated. Otherwise, all of the gains that have been made will be reversed. So I think this is an essential lesson President Buhari has indicated and should be observed by Nigerians.
Besides the presidency, many Muslims in the Federal Capital Territory today trooped out for Jumat prayers after over 2 months of staying away from the mosques in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19. This is the first Jumat prayer to be held in Abuja after the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announced the relaxation of restriction of worship centers. However, some mosques in the capital city did not open, as officials say they are waiting for further directives from their leaders.
It has been over 2 months since Muslims in Abuja gathered like this to observe the weekly Jumat prayers. Although many Muslims look forward to the weekly Jumat prayers in the mosques and other prayer grounds across the nation's capital, many have to worship from their homes and in small congregations after the government imposed restrictions on worship centers in March this year. However, on Monday, June 1st, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 announced the relaxation of the restrictions imposed on worship centers as part of the second phase of the ease of lockdown.
Oh, yes. This solution.
The PTF also issued guidelines for worshippers, which include hand washing, physical distancing, and a compulsory use of face masks. We visited some mosques in Abuja to find out the level of compliance on the first day of resumption, and these are some of the realities we found.
Most of religious leaders are left behind in this COVID issue. If not some imams that are curious to search for what is happening. For instance, nobody gave me guidelines on how to operate after the opening. What are the protocols? Nobody officially communicate to me. And this is a great lap.
But it is not all the mosques in Abuja that opened for the Jumat prayers. Officials at the Ansaruddin Mosque in Wuse too are waiting for further directives from their leaders.
We are expecting directive from the headquarters, Lagos State. If they give us directive to start prayer, we are going to pray. But now we are expecting directive from the headquarters. That is why we are not praying today.
1 week down, 3 more weeks to go, as the Presidential Task Force continues to monitor the level of compliance with the guidelines issued to prevent the spread of COVID-19, even in the face of several relaxations in the second phase of the ease of lockdown. The task force says it will not hesitate to review its decisions, but much will depend on the conduct of Nigerians in the days ahead.
And in the northeastern state of Yobe, the use of face masks and observance of physical distancing is gradually diminishing in many public places, despite the sensitization carried out to stop the spread of coronavirus. Channels Television visited markets and places of worship and found that only 2 in 10 persons are adhering to the safety protocols against the spread of COVID-19.
Since the outbreak of the coronavirus in Nigeria, government and health experts have keyed into sensitization of the public on the need to have personal protective equipment against the spread of the virus. Yobe State was not left out, as its COVID-19 Committee on Prevention and Control ordered the compulsory use of face masks and other personal protective items in worship centers and other public areas.
The committee also realized the need to reduce the risk of transmission of the disease. And following analysis of studies, we now came up with the recommendation. Initially, it was a recommendation for the use of face masks by each and every person before they leave their houses.
While monitoring and enforcement of the directives by the relevant authorities may be a challenge, residents complain of inadequate resources to acquire the personal protective items and still putting food on the table.
As a matter of fact, I know the face masks and other personal protective equipment can help, only that we are in poverty. I think getting food to eat is my first priority. Other things then follow.
Yobe State has so far recorded over 50 confirmed cases of the COVID-19, and the committee need to work harder through sensitization before the virus goes into community transmission in the state.
Observance of safety protocols may largely have been complied with in Lagos, where the state government says it's still working on clinical trial of hydroxychloroquine as a potential treatment for coronavirus. The State Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, explains that the rapid diagnostic test kits for the virus are inaccurate and have not been registered by the National Agency for Food, Drug Administration and Control.
As the race continues to get a vaccine for the coronavirus, a state like Lagos, which is dealing with the highest number of the COVID-19 cases in Nigeria, is hoping that a cure will be found soon.
So this is the...
While the wait is on, the State's Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, says the clinical trials involving hydroxychloroquine are ongoing.
What we are in alignment with is that the clinical trials are continuing in the United Kingdom, they're continuing in India, and we don't see any reason why they should not continue in Nigeria or in fact in other parts of Africa. So as far as Lagos is concerned, we're going to continue the trials. We just stopped for a few days to look at the evidence that was being put out in the literature. We did not think there was any gravitas. So we're well aware that there are rapid diagnostic tests available on the market in Lagos. They have not been validated by the Lagos State Ministry of Health, and as a result, they cannot be registered by NAFDAC.
Some of these issues were raised during a briefing held by the Commissioner, who believes that the death rate is still at a fair percentage to the number of cases recorded.
What we have discovered is that our death rate from COVID is just above 1%. Our death number is still under 100, and we've been inside COVID for almost 4 months now. In the next week or two, we're going to start to develop the strategies and put things in place for deploying home-based care. It requires a lot of strategic planning. It's also quite expensive, and we need to recruit some more manpower. We need to define some policies and strategies, and all that is taking place as we speak.
Presently, the priority of the Lagos state government is to see an end to the COVID-19 pandemic, which is why it's working on a strategy to treat patients who do not require to be at the isolation centers at home. And for those who do not have the virus but still need medical attention, they are advised to visit any of the primary and secondary health care centers in order to receive proper attention.
Meanwhile, the Kogi state government has lifted the lockdown imposed on Kababunu local government area after all the samples taken for contacts of the index cases and the random tests of the people returned negative. Governor Yahya Bello, who announced the lifting today, less than a week into the lockdown, appealed to residents to adhere to the protocols of the World Health Organization and the National Center for Disease Control. The figures from the NCDC show 3 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Kogi State, with the last one recorded on June the 3rd. But Governor Bello insists the state remains COVID-19 free.
The team led by the Honorable Commissioner for Health, Dr. Saka Audu, went swiftly into the local government, beginning with the family members of the purported COVID-19 cases. Tests were conducted, and those tests came out negative. The team went further into contact tracing. Those that were believed to have come in contact with the purported incident cases, they were tested, and the result came out negative. To this end, we are collecting, or we have collected, a lot of samples to be sent to NCDC laboratory to further corroborate this particular claim of ours. This is to tell you that we are coming out very clean.
In part 2, after the break, we'll take a look at the rising cases of rape and gender-based violence in some parts of the country, and I'll be joined by a gender rights activist, Oluwaseun Ayodeji. The show will be That's in a Moment. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari resumes Friday prayers at the Villa Mosque, observes physical distancing as mosques in the nation's capital reopen for Jumat service. Lagos State Government continues clinical trials for hydroxychloroquine, says test results from rapid diagnostic test kits are not accurate. Despite new record of COVID-19 cases in Kogi State by the NCDC, Governor Yahya Bello insists the state is coronavirus-free, lifts lockdown restriction on Kababunu local government. More civil society groups protest against rising cases of rape across the country, with rights activists demanding stiffer penalties. And US President Donald Trump faces more criticism after making remarks about George Floyd during a news conference. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android, Fire TV, and Roku as well. Curbing gender-based violence will depend largely on victims reporting such violence and cases presenting evidence of assault to enable the police get convictions. This is according to the police spokesman Frank Mba, who is speaking to a group of protesters from several civil society organizations in Abuja demanding justice for the over 80 confirmed cases of rape across the country since January. The protesters also reached the National Assembly, where the Speaker of the House of Representatives promised to ensure that states domesticate the Child Rights and Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act.
Mr. Hosea Egon is a widowed security man who makes 22,000 naira a month while raising his two daughters alone in Pape. In 2017, his world came crashing down when he came back from work and discovered his two daughters, who were just 9 and 13 years old at the time, had been raped by his landlord, who till today is still missing.
I went to Human Rights Commission, I went to NAPTIP, I went to Gender Unit. As I'm talking to you, nothing. Human Rights Commission, the petition Inspector General of Police, which they transferred the case from Pape to CID office, which they invite me for CID office, they take my statement, take the children's statement. Up to now, the only thing they were telling me, who will sponsor this case? And I didn't have that money.
The impact this tragedy has had on Hosea's family is unimaginable, but he finds the courage to survive through help from civil society organizations such as these ones, who are demanding justice from the police for over 80 women who've been raped across Nigeria since January of 2020. Cases of gender-based violence in Nigeria are constantly in the news, but convictions are very few.
We have over time discovered that a lot of cases touching on rape and sexual abuses of women fail essentially because the crime scenes are mismanaged. Once you mismanage the crime scene and the key evidence that are essential in establishing the crime and obtaining a successful prosecution of the suspect is lost, the investigation will run into murky waters.
The demand for justice by these protesters is taken to the National Assembly.
Violence Against Persons Prohibitions and the Child Rights Act and the domestication of both. I'm aware that well over about 20-something states are yet to domesticate. So we as a House, as a House, a federal House, are going to take that initiative to the states. I intend to write and communicate with all the speakers of all 36 states for them to be proactive on this particular piece of legislation.
The lockdown affords abusers both opportunity and access to their victims, especially with domestic violence and sexual offences. It is pertinent to note that to get justice for any gender-based violence, you must preserve the greatest evidence of all, your body. Kayla Nagwa, Channels Television News.
Let's take another look at this rather disturbing trend. I'm being joined on the news at 10 by the Executive Director, Stand to End Rape Initiative, and a gender rights activist, Oluwaseun Ayodeji Oshowobi. Thanks a lot for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you for having me.
You were out there on the streets today. It's been a long one for you. But groups like yours have begun to talk about a state of emergency. They're calling it an epidemic, of the SGVB. Tell us a bit more about how you came to that conclusion now.
For years now, we've had a lot of cases of sexual and gender-based violence, from Obiamaka Orakwe to Ochania in Benue State to Uwaila and so many other names I can't mention. And we've experienced women, experiencing violence as well from the Nigerian police force, like Tina Ezekwe, who was shot in Lagos State by Nigerian police officers. So we're at a time where we need to call the issue what it is exactly, an epidemic, because on a daily basis we're having more cases of sexual violence. We, the coalition that's demanding for the state of emergency, started collating, names and cases of violence that have occurred in the past 5 months, just reported on media platforms, and we recorded over 100 cases. Just on media platforms. So imagine how many other cases are reported to civil society organizations, the police, the Human Rights Commission. We're dealing with a lot. And as a first responder, I receive cases every day. Even this morning, before the protest, we were informed of a case that happened in Sabo. It's crazy, really.
I'm so sorry. I know it's difficult, and you are breaking down at this point, and I know it is difficult, but we do have to talk about it, at least from this perspective. Looking at the aggressors, they appear to be getting more brazen, and there's no age range. So we hear about an 85-year-old grandmother to an 11-year-old girl, and it continues like that. What sort of punishment should we be talking about? I know the House of Representatives talked about castration or not, and what do you do in the case of a woman? But from what you see, what sort of punishment do you think would serve as a deterrent?
Honestly, I go with the Nigerian law, and the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act actually states 14 years imprisonment for conviction on rape. So I'm very comfortable with that. We can always review the law and seek, stricter punishment. But my major concern is, before talking about castration or capital punishment, have we even implemented the sentences we have in our current law? Can we even start from there and then begin to demand, better laws? So right now we have only 12 states out of 36 states that have actually, passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition law. Just 12 states. So we're saying that in all other states, either the penal code or the criminal code will be applicable. And in those two laws are just not enough to prosecute rape cases. The Child Rights Act, for example, that protects the rights of children, has not been passed by most northern states, and I have their names here: Bauchi, Yobe, Sokoto, Adamawa, Borno, Zamfara, Gombe, Katsina, Kebbi, Jigawa, and Kano. These northern states have not passed the Child Rights Act. And if they don't pass it, we cannot protect children from being violated, and we can't get justice on their cases.
All right, thank you so much. Executive Director, Stand to End Rape Initiative, Oluwaseun Ayodeji Oshowobi, thanks a lot for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you.
On sharing those rather disturbing statistics. Thank you. Let's cross over to Abuja now. Here's Linda Akigbe. Linda.
Hello, Ijoma. We begin with politics. The powers of the Independent National Electoral Commission to deregister political parties has been reaffirmed by a federal high court sitting in Abuja. Justice Taiwo delivered this verdict in a suit filed by the Hope Democratic Party, challenging INEC's power to deregister it as a political party. The judge pointed out that INEC is empowered by the Constitution to deregister political parties that fail to meet the provisions of Section 225A. The court held that HDP fell short of that provision and also had nothing to show that the action of INEC to deregister it was unlawful. And ahead of the upcoming 2020 governorship election in Edo State, a 5-man screening committee inaugurated by the National Working Committee of the People's Democratic Party has commenced the screening of aspirants. Before the commencement of the screening, which was held behind closed doors, the chairman of the party, Mr. Kingsley Chinda, assured the party and the aspirants that the committee will be strict and fair. Mr. Gideon Ihine and Obeide Ihama were screened physically, while Mr. Kenneth Imaswabo was screened through virtual means.
For our great party to continue to improve on our electoral fortunes and dominate the nation's political landscape, our leadership selection process must be reformed. No matter the quality and scope of the reform, however, such reform can only achieve the desired objective if the party's leadership selection process is rooted in the cardinal attributes of integrity, discipline, patriotism, clarity of vision, intellectual adequacy, and other positive character requirements needed to lead this great country, Nigeria, out of being a debtor nation, out of being full of contradictions, to the promised land that we all deserve. In the upcoming general elections, our party, or indeed any political party, will sail or sink based on the quality, popularity, and electability of the candidates fielded.
Meanwhile, 6 governorship aspirants will test their popularity in the All Progressive Congress primary election on June the 22nd to determine the party's flag bearer in the forthcoming Edo State governorship election. The aspirants, as announced by the party, are incumbent Governor Godwin Obaseki, Mr. Osage Ize Iyamu, Pius Odubu, Chris Ogenwoye, Osaro Obaze, and Matthew Idweyikeme. Ahead of the primary, the aspirants are to be screened on June the 10th and 11th. To ensure transparency in the exercise, the party says it would display documents submitted by the aspirants at its national secretariat in Abuja and in Benin City, the Edo State capital, on June the 8th and 9th, 2020, for claims and objections. Party members, as well as the general public, are to help the screening committee to check the credentials and documents provided by the aspirants for accuracy. When the news at 10 returns, African Development Bank approves new 5-year strategy for Nigeria to tackle economic shocks arising from COVID-19. That's on Business News. Please stay with us. You're welcome back to the news at 10, coming to you live from Abuja. Law enforcement agencies in Kogi State have been given marching orders to go after the perpetrators of the robbery attack in Insolu, Yaba West local government area of the state. Governor Yaya Bello, who gave the order at a press conference in Lokoja, the state capital, also appealed to the residents to cooperate with security agents by offering useful information that could lead to the arrest of the perpetrators.
Yagba West local government area has witnessed a robbery attack. An investigation has already commenced. The Commissioner of Police in Kogi State was at Isonlu for an on-the-spot assessment of the incident. He was received at the Divisional Police Station by some police officers. The robbers who first attacked the Divisional Police Station in Isonlu killed 8 police officers, 3 female and 5 male, while some others with bullet wounds are presently undergoing treatment at various hospitals.
The DP was one of the casualties because when they came in, he was trying to find his way to where he could take cover, not knowing that even behind his window they were watching him, and the window is the kind of all these tinted ones. So as he was putting his head out of the window, they got him.
The Isonlu Divisional Police Headquarters was riddled with bullets, vehicles shattered, and the ceiling brought down. The bullet holes indeed tells the story of what might have actually happened.
The Commissioner of Police was also led to the scene of the bank robbery, where the robbers were said to have spent over an hour using dynamite to blow up the entrance to the bank and even killing some customers who came to the bank to transact business.
We're just hearing pa 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 pa. We say, is this SARS that just entered now that we're releasing the bullet? We were here. Pa, pa, pa. Later we said no, it wasn't them. That it should be Anambra. They've now they now entered the police station shooting.
Governor Yahaya Bello declared a minute silence for those who died in the ugly incident, while he urged the security agents to do everything possible in apprehending the robbers responsible for the attacks.
I trust our security agencies that they will go after those who carried out the dastard act and they will be brought to justice.
The actual number of casualties from the bank seems uncertain for now, but the robbers were said to have carted away millions of naira from the bank.
Dock workers at the Rivers Port today commended President Buhari for his commitment in reopening the Bua terminals in Port Harcourt shut down last year by the Nigerian Ports Authority. The workers in their numbers took to the Port Harcourt docks to thank key stakeholders for their timely intervention in the crisis between the Bua ports and terminals and the NPA, which rendered business activities at the terminals void.
After a tough period of being shut by the Nigerian Ports Authority, the gates are open again and trucks drive into the Bua terminal in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. It's cheers all round from workers who have been without work since the terminal was decommissioned.
Today is one of the happiest days I have experienced, because I strongly believe that we are going back and change will come back to normalcy. All the double cars, hundreds and thousands of people crying for years now. Being hungry, some have left for home, nothing to eat, nothing to survive. But indeed, he has shown himself a father. We appreciate him and say a big thank you. May God bless him and give him long life. Next, we also appreciate the Bua Group CEO who have reached out to us monthly. I want to say a big thank you to him. May God bless him.
A national trustee of the Dock Workers branch of the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria also extends his gratitude to the federal government over the reopening.
The dock workers in Port Harcourt Port are happy, and we are here to tell Mr. President thank you for bringing back hope to the dock workers in Port Harcourt Port. We are happy, and we are also here to tell the chief executive of the Bua Group, who has been also in his own message, have been talking to or reaching out to the dock workers despite the hardship.
Activities at this $400 million terminal were put on hold over what the authorities called safety concerns. But today everything appears to have been ironed out, for which the Bua Group means catching up on lost time and making sure the issues that led to its closure never repeat themselves.
And that's all from Abuja. Back to you, Joma.
Thanks a lot, Linda. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the reappointment of Umar Dampata as the Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission. The Federal Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy broke the news on its official Twitter handle. The minister said Mr. Dambata's reappointment was in line with the Nigerian Communications Act of 2003. The Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Dr. Issa Pantami, urged the reappointed Executive Vice Chairman to improve on the Commission's performance and also ensure compliance with the government's directives. Mr. Dambata was first appointed in August 2015 to replace Eugene Joa. To security matters now, gunmen have abducted 6 people, including 5 boys of the same parents in Chikun local government area of Kaduna State. The boys, aged between 8 and 18, were kidnapped while they were sleeping in their home in the late hours of Thursday. Narrating the incident, their father says the kidnappers gained access to his compound by breaking through the fence and later forcing their way into the main building. The Kaduna State Commissioner for Internal Security and the Commissioner of Police, who visited the victim's family, gave an assurance that the problems of banditry and kidnapping are being tackled. And over in the southeast, road construction in Anambra State has been one of the targets of Governor Willie Obiano's administration, particularly those of economic importance. During a two-day road inspection exercise in Idemili South Local Government Area and Urumba South Local Government, the governor reiterated his commitment to ensuring that communities with agriculture potentials have access to roads to convey their crops to the markets.
Agriculture is one of Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano's 4 pillars of development. According to him, that is what informs his attention to critical roads, particularly the ones that lead to agrarian communities. This road at Abatete in Idemili South Local Government Area of the state is one of them. It is the first time the community will have an asphalted road.
With the provision of this road, the problem of that hold up for 6 hours in a cargo is a thing of the past.
Out of the 3 kilometers, Your Excellency, is remaining about 600 meters to complete the entire road. And from the discussion we had with the contractor, in less than 2 weeks, Your Excellency, we shall be here to commission this road.
Governor Obiano looks satisfied with the new state of the road and wants them protected.
Don't allow waste to be on that drain, inside the drainage, because water will overflow and it will attack this beautiful road. You know, and don't burn tires on top of the road during festivities. If you burn tire on top of asphalt, it will make a ring there, and from there the road will start giving away.
Ihite community in Urumba South Local Government Area is his host on the second day of the tour. The ongoing 2.5-kilometer Ihite-Ndioji Road project is meant for completion in 2 weeks.
It's a 2.5-kilometer road. Like we've heard from the contractor, the engineer working on site, this road will be completed before the rain starts here.
On completion of this project, travel time between Anambra and Abia states on this road is expected to drop to 15 minutes from 1 hour.
Let's take a look at some business news now. Here's Teniola Shobowale.
Thanks a lot, Ijoma. Welcome to Business News. The board of the African Development Bank has approved Nigeria's 5-year country strategy paper, which incorporates emerging development realities and opportunities shaping Nigeria's political and economic landscape. A statement by the senior director for the bank in Nigeria, Ebrima Fal, says the bank will also assist Nigeria to address economic shocks associated with the COVID-19 pandemic and lower oil price by focusing its intervention in key sectors. He adds that under the CSP, the bank will deploy a combination of sovereign and non-sovereign financing instruments to support the 2 priority areas, including investment and institutional support projects, among others. Meanwhile, the board of the AFDB says it has approved an independent review of the investigation process that led to the exoneration of its president, Mr. Akinwumi Adesina, for allegedly violating the bank's code of conduct. In a statement released today, the board said the decision was taken at the meeting of its ethics committee on Thursday in response to the demand by the U.S. government calling for a fresh and in-depth investigation into the allegations. It says the independent review shall be conducted by a high-caliber individual of unquestionable character, high international reputation and integrity within a short time period of not more than 2 to 4 weeks maximum, taking the bank group's electoral calendar into account. Now, a survey by the National Bureau of Statistics shows that 42% of Nigerians who were working before the COVID-19 outbreak are currently not working. The survey, Nigeria COVID-19 National Phone Survey, released on Friday by the Statistic Office on Households, adds that commerce, service and agricultural sectors felt the impact of the virus the most. It also shows that most widely reported shock experienced by households was an increase in prices of major food items faced by 85% of households since the outbreak, compared to only 19% between January 2017 and January 2019. Well, the NSC's main index fell by a wider margin compared to the 0.38% decline recorded in Thursday's trading session after intense sell pressure hit key value equities. Chimeze Obi Iwawogu has details of stock performance.
Thank you and welcome to the Stock Market Report. The profit taken at the market today cuts across all the sectors, with the big boys badly hit. Dangote Cement, Boa Cement, Nigerian Breweries and GT Bank all in the waters. Look at what the loss from the two cement giants, Dangote and Boa, did to the industrial sector, almost 4% drop. Nigerian Breweries and Cadbury were the major cause of the drop on the consumer goods sector. Now, the bears pulled back the overall index by 1.17%. Activity was quite minimal, just a little over 214 million shares traded in 4,342 deals and valued at about 2.5 billion naira. What we saw today didn't come as a surprise. It's market dynamism. And don't forget, this is weekend, and so profit takers would want to take their benefits. Next week promises better returns on investment as the bulls are expected to return. And that was the Stock Market Report. I'm Chimeze Obi Iwago.
And that's business news tonight. It's back to you, Ijeoma.
Welcome back. The Washington, D.C. mayor has changed the name of a plaza outside the White House to Black Lives Matter Plaza in a rebuke to President Trump. Mayor Muriel Bowser, a Democrat, also unveiled a 2-block-long mural painted onto the street leading up to the White House, declaring Black Lives Matter. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump is facing further criticism after making remarks about George Floyd during his news conference on job gains in the country. He said hopefully George is looking down right now and saying this is a great thing that's happening for our country. This is a great day for him. It's a great day for everybody. His remarks drew the angst of observers and journalists present who questioned how Floyd would enjoy unemployment numbers after being killed. Here's Simon Pusey with more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London for your international news around the world in 5. Commemorations have taken place across the United States for George Floyd, the black man whose murder has set off a wave of protests across the country. Thousands of people gathered for a tribute in Minneapolis, standing in silence for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, the amount of time Floyd was alleged to have been on the ground under the control of police. Civil rights leader Al Sharpton vowed that mass protests would continue until there was change in the whole of the US system of justice. Democrats also gathered in Emancipation Hall on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. on Thursday to pay tribute. Some knelt as they also observed an 8-minute, 46-second moment of silence. Demonstrations and vigils also took place in cities across the country. In New York, thousands marched over Brooklyn Bridge, while in Detroit, buildings were lit purple in honor of Floyd. Videos of police brutality during protests have also emerged. In Buffalo, a city in New York State, 2 officers were suspended after they were seen shoving an elderly white man to the ground. The police weren't always battling demonstrators, though. Here in Lincoln, a city in the state of Nebraska, police and community activists danced after working together to address complaints about law enforcement issues. 3 of the 4 Minneapolis police officers who arrested Floyd have made their first court appearance to face charges of aiding and abetting his murder. The 4th policeman has been charged with second-degree murder and appeared before a judge last week. Forces belonging to the Libyan National Army led by Khalifa Haftar have confirmed their redeployment away from the Libyan capital. It's after Libya's internationally recognised government regained control of Tripoli, driving eastern forces out of the capital after a year of conflict in which foreign powers poured in arms and fighters. The main outside powers engaged in the conflict have welcomed the decision to resume ceasefire talks and have publicly said they support a political resolution, but are yet to agree on a long-term settlement. A group of Hong Kong artists have reenacted a famous scene from the Tiananmen Square uprising, during which a man stood in front of tanks as Chinese troops opened fire on pro-democracy protesters. Since the 1989 protests, these images of a man blocking a tank have become a symbol of peaceful protest and resistance to state violence. The artists imitated the unidentified man, wearing similar outfits and holding shopping bags in each hand as they stood silently in front of the Hong Kong government's headquarters. Thousands took to the streets in Hong Kong on Thursday to commemorate the Tiananmen crackdown, despite a police ban on the vigil due to COVID-19. Madagascar's education minister has been sacked after announcing a plan to buy sweets for students to take the edge off the bitter taste of a herbal tea the president said is a coronavirus remedy. Minister Rijasoa Andrea Manana said she was ordering $2.2 million worth of sweets to go with the remedy, which some experts have warned is useless against COVID-19. The fact so much money was going to sweets in one of the world's poorest countries sparked outrage, and the order was cancelled. In northern Norway, several buildings have been destroyed by a powerful landslide that caused them to collapse into the sea. The 800-metre-long slide took with it 8 buildings and a caravan, but there were no reports of any deaths or injuries. Local media reported that one person had been evacuated and that a dog, which had been swept into the sea, swam ashore to safety. And finally, an 80-year-old grandma selling red apricots in northwestern China's Shanxi province has won the hearts of many people across the country through her lively style of live streaming. During her live streams, Sui demonstrates how soft and delicious the apricots are, a feat that is further illustrated by her lack of teeth. Her videos have received more than 10 million views in a week and have boosted the daily sales of local apricots to over 10,000 yuan. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Bahrain's World 400 metres champion Salwa Eid Nasser has been provisionally suspended by the Athletics Integrity Unit for failing to make herself available for anti-doping tests. The 22-year-old clocked 48.14 seconds, the third fastest time in history to claim the world title in Doha in 2019. Nasser, who was born in Nigeria but switched allegiance to Bahrain in 2014, could face a ban of up to 2 years for the whereabouts violation. Liverpool FC will resume their quest for a first top-flight title in 30 years against City rivals Everton on June 21st as the Premier League released its revised fixture list for the first 3 weeks of the restarted season. The Merseyside Giants are 25 points clear at the top and are 2 victories away from winning the Premier League, but will have a shot at securing the title by beating Everton if Manchester City lose to Arsenal. Cristiano Ronaldo has become the first footballer to earn over $1 billion, according to Forbes. Ronaldo is ranked at number 4 in the Business Magazine's list of the world's highest paid figures in 2020, with $105 million before tax over the past year, taking his career earnings to $1 billion. According to Forbes, he is just the 3rd athlete to achieve billionaire status while still active and the first to do so playing a team sport. And thousands of fans poured into stadiums in Vietnam as the country resumed top-flight football without social distancing measures owing to its success in combating the spread of the coronavirus. Matches in Vietnam's professional league were suspended in March, but with no coronavirus deaths and just 328 confirmed cases, the communist country is eagerly pursuing a return to normalcy to get its economy back on track. And that's sports news. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. Back to you, Joma.
Thanks a lot, Ayotunde. And the main news again. President Muhammadu Buhari today resumed Friday prayers at the Presidential Villa Mosque, where physical distancing was observed. Other mosques in the nation's capital also reopened for the Jumat service. Also today, Lagos State government said it will continue its clinical trials for hydroxychloroquine. The State Commissioner of Health also said the test results from rapid diagnostic test kits are not accurate. And U.S. President Donald Trump today faced more criticism after making remarks about George Floyd during a news conference on job gains. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks a lot for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Do have a good weekend and do stay safe. Good night.